Hello, I'm Colette with Witch Ways, and I'm here today to talk about simple tree magic for the beginner, particularly about the tree birch. This is the first of a series, and I hope to do it every few weeks or so, adding a new tree. And I want to say that if you're just starting out with tree magic, a really good practice is to just find a friendly tree outside, to sit or stand near it, and to just practice breathing out and feeling your breath going into the tree and the tree's breath coming back to you, because that's a gaseous exchange that as humans and trees we do all the time anyway, and just to establish connection that way. And then as you're doing that, just kind of soften and let yourself extend a little bit to the tree and let the tree extend itself to you. And I think that you'll get a lot of really great information about the tree, get to know it, and start to develop a relationship. Another thing that you can do is, if you have a grounding practice, is to imagine yourself as part of a tree and let that grounding process unfold as it normally would, only you're doing that from the inside of a tree. Okay, let's jump into the specific magic that you can do with birch. Birch is generally associated with clearing, protection, in some people's minds, protection specifically of women and mothers. It's associated with birth and cycles of life and death. And one of the simplest ways to work with that is to just hold a piece of birch or put a piece of birch on your altar as you are doing magic around any of those particular things. Another super easy thing to do is work with what's called birch paper. Birch paper is the peeled off bark of the birch tree. And you can take it from branches that have been pruned. It'll take a little bit of work for you to figure out the best way to pull it off. I would not take just a big chunk of birch bark off of a living tree. That could damage the tree pretty severely. But there's an easier way than any of those, and that is to find a kind of birch that's called paper birch. Paper birch is a particular kind where very thin pieces of the bark just curl back on themselves and fall off of the tree to the ground. And so you can harvest it right off the ground. And then if you want to do some magic with that, you can take those pieces of birch bark and gently smooth them out and write your wish as a word, a sentence, a symbol, or a picture, and then let it curl back up or do whatever it wants to do, and then place it safely somewhere on your altar, somewhere safe in your house, or out in your yard somewhere if that feels safe to you. Let it be until the magic has come to fruition or something has changed in your life to where you feel that this magic is no longer relevant anymore. Then you can burn or bury that piece of paper with your wish on it. Another thing that you can do is, if you work with specific beings, you can again write your wish or your need or your prayer out on the birch paper and burn it directly. Fire takes magic from the physical and takes it up into the spirit world, and so it directly communicates that magic. It's also really lovely to write letters to your ancestors on, again burning it, or maybe burying it in that case. I also feel like it's a really lovely tradition to write special notes to friends on. The next piece of magic I'm going to talk about comes from an old practice called beating the bounds magic. And this was the practice that has gone on for a couple thousand years in some parts of Europe and the Mediterranean, where people would annually or maybe every several years walk the edges of a particular geographic area so that everyone was clear on the boundaries of it. And the magical part involved people carrying along birch whisks or sometimes willow and marking or touching significant landmarks like trees or stones or fords or places where highways or roads or paths came together so that everyone remembered it. And originally, it's believed that the magic of it came with the movement of the birch twigs or the willow twigs at the significant points, and that was a way of protecting and clearing any malevolent spirits out of the area, just moving the stagnant energy out. This is a tradition that has been adapted to be used in modern witchcraft. And today, one of the ways that you can use this is whenever you move into a new space, you can take these birch whisks and brush down the walls or the corners of your new house or the corners of your new room if you're moving into a situation with other people. You can also do this out in the yard and just hold that intention of being in relationship with this place and clearing out any stagnant energy that doesn't need to be there and making it new and ready for you to start a new cycle there. Another piece of magic that you can do is to work with birch with babies, newborns, very small children. Birch is super protective of the young ones, and it was common for people to make cradles for babies out of birch as a means of protecting them. Probably most of us today, that isn't something that is really on the agenda to have a handmade nice birch cradle. If you can, that's great. But for me, my take on it and what I've done sometimes is to take birch twigs and just bundle them up and tie them together in a bundle and then hang them somewhere safe away from the baby on the cradle and ask for protection. Okay, I want to talk about one of my really fun magical tools that I make and have my students make, and that's birch whisks. And I use them for clearing physical objects as well as people. And here's an example of one. And I'll put some pictures up so that you can see them a little closer as well. You can make them lots of different ways and to look lots of different ways. And the way that you make them just simply is this time of year in anywhere starting from early February through about the end of February, birch twists, as I call them, they're these kind of loose whips, fall to the ground and you can gather them after a windstorm. And as you can see, I have a whole bunch of them here, like on my altar that I have gathered and are just hanging down. And gather them up, cut them into even lengths, and tie them with natural string. At some point, hopefully I'll get a camera that will be better and I can make a whole video about making birch whisk tools, but they're really great. You use them to clear things down by just brushing them down, and you can just dip them in water afterwards to rinse them off, and they're good to go again. Birch is associated with some deities, and if that's something that interests you, birch can perhaps be a way to start a relationship working with some of those deities, or a way to enhance an already existing relationship. So the deities that I know of that are associated with birch are Freya from the northern countries, Venus from the Mediterranean, Blodeuwedd, which is one pronunciation, or Blodeuwedd, which is another pronunciation of a Welsh goddess, and sometimes Brighid in Ireland is associated with birch, although she's more commonly associated with oaks. And a way to do that and start that and use birch as a way to enhance that is to hold a piece of birch, visualize birch, or to sit with a birch tree as you soften and invite one of those deities to expand and make themselves more known to you. Another way that you can invoke your wishes or desires around any of the associations with birch is to use its symbol either on a regular piece of paper, on a stone, or on a piece of birch paper. Birch has a symbol and is used in both the Germanic runes and the Celtic Ogham, which are both alphabets that have magical and mundane meanings. And so you can just, again, the same as you did with the birch paper, make your wish, draw your rune, and then let the spell sit until you are done with that magic, and then dispose of it either by burying or burning or releasing it in some fashion. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate everyone who watches and likes these videos. If you'd like to see me keep making more, please subscribe and hit the like button, and I'll see you next time.